Okay, well, in the interest of time, we've got a lot of content today, so let's get going. Thanks everyone for joining us today on this webinar where we're going to be talking about the impact of AI and large language models on business intelligence, and specifically sort of how it can be thought about in terms of improving the user experience. And I'm excited to welcome Wayne Eckerson onto the webinar with us again today. Hi, Wayne.
Hey, Mike.
Obviously, a lot of you will know Wayne. He's been on with us before, a thought leader in the BI and analytics space, and he's going to be giving initially his thoughts and perspective on this topic and where he sees the opportunities in the space. And then I'm going to talk about what Metric Insights is doing specifically as it relates to integrating LLMs and AI into our platform as sort of a practical example of how you might think about this topic and applying it in your organization. A couple of housekeeping things. We are recording. We'll send out a link afterwards for you to share with others in your organization, and would encourage you to chat and enter questions in the Q&A window. We'll certainly leave a few minutes for those at the end. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, Wayne. Hopefully you can share your slides now and pass it over to Wayne to kick things off.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Mike, and everyone on the line. Really interesting topic today. It's attracting a lot of interest. So let's dive in here. To understand the impact of LLMs on BI, we have to understand the state of BI, which you can see from this chart really hasn't changed much in a long, long time in terms of adoption. So percentage of active BI users versus all employees has been stuck between 20 and 25% on average, which is...
Oh, Wayne, I'm just going to jump in. Can you hit that swap displays button at the top of your screen on the...
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, now you got the full slide there. Okay.
Okay, it's reverse how it usually is here. Yeah, so you know, it's kind of been a sorry state for BI, kind of a little bit of a black eye for BI, this adoption rate. And it's not like the industry as a whole hasn't really tried to do something about this. And I think you could characterize this as the quest for self-service BI to enable more users to do more with BI tools, essentially to explore data, ask questions of data, get answers and insights, and then share with others. We've just been stuck. It's been hard to do that. So a lot of vendors in this space have saying, well, let's just make BI easier. And we've had a long history of doing exactly that, from desktop reporting tools in 1995 era to web-based tools around 2000 to visual analysis tools around 2010. More recently, search-based BI tools, kind of like Google for BI, as well as embedded BI tools. So we can just embed BI charts and tables inside other apps that will increase adoption. And we're here today to talk about this newest quest or initiative to make BI easier, which I'm calling conversational BI. It's made possible through large language models, which are made possible through generative AI. Kind of a deep learning technique that's been out there for quite a while, but now has reached an ascendancy. The thing that I think is important to understand is who is adopting and who is not. These first three eras of BI tools really were geared to power users, if you will, data analysts, data scientists, people who can, you know, a little more technical, a little more facile with data, who can use these tools to generate charts and analysis and dashboards. These last two categories really are more targeted towards casual users, or really for both types of users, both casual and power users. So I really do think it's important to understand who your target audience is, and then we can ask who's going to benefit from conversational BI. So let's drill into this a little bit more. This is a kind of a model we've used for quite a few years. It seems to hold true. Casual users consist of two major groups: data consumers, who just consume whatever is given to them as is, and data explorers, who are really data consumers, i.e. regular business people, who are willing to take an extra step and maybe generate their own chart or visualization or even dashboard if it's easy enough, right? And then this other group are the power users, typically data analysts, data scientists, reside in the business and have been hired to actually, do stuff with data. But the key here is, what is the percentage of these users in your organization? So over the years, it's been pretty consistent that the vast majority of your users are casual users. 60% are data consumers who just take whatever you give them, and 30% are data explorers who want to do a little bit more. And then 10% are the power users, right? So I think the quest for BI vendors is we've already got the power users in our camp. We've had them forever. How do we get more of the data consumers and data explorers to use our tools and have a conversation with data? So that begs the question, how do data consumers in particular want to use data? And much to the chagrin of a lot of tools vendors, what they really want to do, ideally, is pick up a phone and call somebody, right? They don't want to mess around with the tool because they probably forgot how to use it. They don't understand all the features and functions, and they may not even understand the data that they're looking at. So they'd rather just call someone who does do this day in, day out for a living and ask them the question that's on their mind, right? That is the metaphor. That is the method that they want to use for interacting with data. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'd love to hear your comments in the chat section here. So they want to call someone and have a conversation. So this brings us to this era of conversational BI. I think with the advent of generative AI and large language models, we are there. We can now converse with data, and not just power users, but casual users. So I'm calling these LLMs for BI, at least the BI vendors are incorporating LLMs into the tools. They're creating what I'm calling a robo-analyst. Basically, the person, the data consumer or data explorer, can pick up the phone and call, but in this case, all they have to do is type words into a prompt and they can get an answer. Not just one answer, they can have an ongoing conversation. That's what's really unique about these new chatbots. Chatbots of old didn't remember what you just asked them or what they just told you. The new chatbots, facilitated by LLMs, do remember, and you can actually have a conversation with them. That's really revolutionary. The other cool thing is that, this generative AI is not just for casual users. There's a lot of power in there for power users. So I'm calling LLMs for these folks code whisperers, because they can generate code, they can debug code, they can help you optimize code, and they can also document what your code means in plain English or whatever language you're talking in. I also call them data grunts because they can do a lot of grunt work that most people don't want to do, like documenting stuff, right? Creating definitions of tables and columns. This is what LLMs are great for, right? You still have to check what they're writing, but in general, they'll do massive amounts of grunt work for you in that case. And the other thing, and this is surprising me, is that they're co-pilots. You can actually ask them for advice on how to do things that you're trying to do as a software developer or a BI developer that you've never done before. And you really want some guidance on how to think about approaching this, what steps you might want to take. And through a conversation, they can help guide you through the process of developing something that you've never developed before. Pretty cool. So this is the era of conversational BI. So what's behind this technology? You probably all know this already, but these large language model chatbots use generative AI to find the next best word using statistical calculations trained on billions of documents. Now, next best word, if you've used Gmail, you see that all the time, right? Because Gmail wants to finish your sentences for you, right? It's the same technology essentially, but on a massive scale, trained on billions of documents. So that's really what we're talking about. And it's all done doing statistics, which means it's not language dependent. So it can generate words in whatever language you want. So as we've all seen, there's a lot of advantages here, and it's revolutionizing the industry and society as a whole. There's pros and cons. So the pros are that you can type plain English words into a prompt-based interface, not unlike a search engine, right? But in this case, it remembers the context. It can support any language you want. It can even imitate any style or person, assuming the data has been trained on that style or person, which if you're training on billions and billions of documents, it probably has. Also, what a lot of companies are now doing, and BI vendors as well, are allowing their customers to train these models on their own data in a secure space. And then there's also companion image models that do the same thing for images that the chatbots that we've been using have done for text, right? Now, we've all heard about the disadvantages. These tools can make stuff up, these so-called hallucinations, because they're probabilistic. They're not deterministic tools. They're statistically based, which means they're taking a guess at what the answer is to your question, and sometimes their guesses are way off the mark. It's also trained on public content, which, as we're seeing through some lawsuits, poses some legal issues. And then there's security issues about whether, it's training on your content, and you may not want them to train on your content behind your firewalls. It also really it can generate SQL, but not complex SQL. Multi-fact joins are problematic. Querying tables with hundreds of columns is problematic. It's not great with dates or math. And it's got scalability limitations in terms of how much data you can put into it. All that's changing quickly, and those scalability limitations might go away altogether. So this is the underlying technology that's creating this revolution, not only in BI, but in many, many other domains. But certainly we're seeing a huge impact in the business intelligence space. So as I said, I think we're entering the era of conversational BI, and the revolutionary change here is that users, both casual users and power users, will begin to converse with an AI bot to do anything they want in the BI tool rather than the BI tool. So it becomes a completely new interface if you choose. And the BI tool essentially recedes into the background. It's still required, it's still needed, but the AI bot now understands the BI tool and the functionality it brings to the table, and it can activate that functionality on demand on behalf of the users, including queries, obviously, but also functions like, help me set up an alert, for instance, or I want to share this with Joe over in finance and send it to his Slack channel. So let me give you a few examples here. So for a casual user, here's how the conversation might go. Hey, Wayne, I'm your AI analyst, your robo analyst. Ask me a question or tell me how I can help you. And I might reply, well, could you recommend a report that explains why net margins dropped last week in Asia? Sure, here are 3 reports with descriptions of each, and you can choose one that you want. Great. Now, can you explain why in this one report sales for married females are so low? Sure. And they'll do an additional analysis. 68% of sales for married females come from the West region, and flooding there impacted sales. Okay, see, it's remembering the conversation, right? You couldn't do this before. Can you switch to a dashboard view and highlight the West region in red? This is activating a function in the BI tool. Sure, here it is. And add a picture of a flooded store in the background. So this is where the image capabilities come in. Sure, here it is. Can you set an alert on Asia sales in the West region for me? Sure, I created an alert of weekly sales in the region An alert. If weekly sales in the region fall below the 30-day moving average, is that okay? So it's making some assumptions about what kind of alert you want based on your profile and based on the nature of the data or other types of alerts that have been set in the past. Yes, and please send this to me via my Slack channel. Will do. All right, so this is an example of a conversation you might have where the AI bot is activating functions within the underlying BI tool in which it's embedded. How about for power users? All right, here's an example. Hey, Wayne, I'm your AI co-pilot, code whisperer and data grunt. How can I help? Can you find reports that use the cust_Asia column, as well as all tables in low usage reports? Well, sure. Here are all the reports that use that table, and here are all low usage tables. All right. Can you generate SQL code that extracts data from SAP, explain that code to me, in other words, document what it means, and debug my additions to it? This is the code whisperer. Yes, here's the code, and I found one error in your code, and here's the fix. Should I fix it? Yes, please. And can you create a table and column descriptions for everything we created? This is the data grunt. Sure, here you go. What else do you need? I have to build a customer 360 model, but I really don't know how to do that. Can you guide me? Okay, some questions for you to consider. Who are you trying to serve? What data do they need? Where is that data? Just the beginning of the process, right? Great, I'll work on this. Meanwhile, please summarize the findings in these charts for our German CFO. Done. Should I translate this into German? Yes, and please share this with Gunther via his Slack channel. Will do. All right, so a conversation, now that you type things in via a prompt, I suppose in the near future we'll be able to do that all via a voice prompt as well. So these are examples of the kinds of conversations that casual users and power users might have thanks to large language model integration with BI tools. All right, so just to summarize some of the use cases, and I did some research on a number of BI tools. Every BI vendor is working hard to incorporate large language models in some shape, form, and they're all doing slightly different things. So this is kind of the things that I found in summary. So for casual users, these AI bots will recommend reports. They will generate insights based on your questions, and you can have a conversation where they keep drilling and drilling and drilling into the data for you. They'll explain insights in words. We used to use natural language generation to kind of generate text to accompany our charts or dashboards. And those were okay. Frankly, I never read them because they're all just kind of very static and descriptive. Well, now with LLMs, they're going to do more than just describe what is in the chart. They'll actually start to describe the insights that the chart indicates. What's the message the data is saying. They'll also help explain predictive models, because that's always been a bugaboo for casual users, because usually there's percentages and probabilities and things like that. Now they'll be able to explain what they're seeing in plain English, in ways that will mean something to them. And if you prompt the AI bot to say, explain this predictive model to my CFO or my CEO or my grandmother or 10-year-old child, it will do it, right? In the style that's most appropriate for those personas, which is kind of mind-boggling. And it will activate functions like share the report or set the alert, things like that. And it will even create reports and dashboards for you if you give it enough descriptions in the prompt. And as we all have found out, the more you iterate with your prompts, the more you get what you want with these types of tools, right? For power users, as I said, it's the code whisperer, it's the data grunt, and it's the co-pilot, right? So generate and debug code, explain and document code, because I don't know why, but for some reason in BI as in other domains, we're starting to go back to coding again, right? We've always done SQL coding, but now there's also Python and R and all these other things. But so there's a lot more coding today, and these LLM tools are really good at helping to generate, debug, optimize, and explain your code, which is very helpful. It's going to make developers much more productive. It will help guide application development. That's the kind of co-pilot nature of these AI bots. Can generate the schema descriptions. That's kind of the data grunt capability. It will evaluate the output of itself, right? Which is kind of interesting because we know these things have to be checked. You just can't take them carte blanche necessarily unless they've been trained on a very domain-based small language model, right? But even then, we're seeing models that evaluate the output of models so you can have some degree of confidence that this thing is not hallucinating on you. And it can even create predictive features, right? So that's one of the challenges that data scientists face. You get all these columns in various tables, which combination of columns are the right ones to use, or, you know, can we create new features based on existing columns? So it will help you do that. So these are just some of the things that I found. I'm sure there's others out there. I'd love to hear what you've discovered. But this is kind of a summary of, I think, the state of the technology today and how it's being used within BI tools. You know, my colleague Kevin Petrie is also doing the same thing on the data management side. And obviously there's a lot of similarities, especially on the power user features that are listed here because it's all code-based. Now, I started this session talking about self-service, and really a lot of BI vendors have been, and companies and their customers have been chasing this notion of self-service, right? If we can just empower users with the right tools, they can go ask questions of the data themselves and serve themselves, and they don't have to wait in line for IT to help them, or wait in line for a data engineer to get the data, or wait in line for a data analyst to help them or answer their questions, right? There's a lot of waiting in lines in the BI history, right? And ultimately, we don't want users to have to sit and wait for answers to data. We want them to get the answers themselves. But I've been talking about researching, speaking, and consulting about self-service BI for over 20 years. And I quickly found out that it's not as easy as everyone thinks. Because everyone thinks you just give people a tool and they'll be empowered and self-service will be done, right? And that's all we have to do. Just give them the right tool. And here's another tool, right? LLM-based BI tools. Give them that tool and they'll be empowered. I wish it was that easy. In our consulting practice, and we do a lot of project-based consulting with large companies around the world, what I've always seen is that you will not get self-service until you've done a lot of other things right. And those things are, you need the right operating model, the right data architecture, the right data governance, the right data literacy, the right project management and development methodology. And then you can give them the right tools. And if you do all those things right, you have a chance of doing self-service analytics. And there's my AI bot talking to me out of turn. So, when we help companies in the trenches move the needle with data and analytics, we help them with these things: operating model, architecture, governance, literacy, project management. And we find when they can start moving the needle in each of these individual areas, and getting alignment within their organization and in their architecture and having appropriate governance and training, then people become empowered. So don't think LLMs are a silver bullet, because they won't be. I think they're going to improve productivity of both casual and power users. And it's an exciting time. I'm really eager to see where all this will go. In fact, that is a great segue to you, Mike, so you can tell them what you're seeing and how you've incorporated all this stuff into your very excellent tool. So let me stop sharing and let you get to work here.
Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, definitely some interesting perspectives and in line with kind of what we're seeing over here at Metric Insights. And I was sharing with Wayne just before this presentation, I was actually at a conference in the Bay Area yesterday, still going on today, with a lot of investors over here. And yeah, many were talking about sort of something like 80% of the new funds that they have in place, they're looking to allocate to AI, LLM type technologies. And they're kind of bucketing them into a number of areas. You know, there's the companies, as Wayne spoke about, who are creating sort of these co-pilots, these chatbots in their own right to solve particular issues. And then there's companies like ourselves who are solving problems today, who are looking at saying, okay, how can AI and LLM integration help improve the experience that we're giving to our users? And that's really what I want to pick up on today, is kind of use Metric Insights as an example of how a vendor is introducing AI into the platform, and how you might think about applications of AI in your organization. And to kind of reiterate some of the things that Wayne said, you know, your first slides, Wayne, make me hesitantly laugh, because I think that is the reality of what we've all been living through and still live through. And you know, the BI is somewhat the victim of its own success, right? Despite the fact that we're spending billions on it, that we're creating, you know, huge amounts of content out there, reality is a lot of that is still going unused. A lot of, you know, tool utilization is particularly poor. And as Wayne alluded to, the answer today is, you know, I'll pick up the phone to the analyst rather than use BI to answer my question. So yeah, I want to talk about what Metric Insights is in the market to solve these sort of problems. And I want to sort of explain to you what we're doing today, and then talk about how we're thinking about AI to improve what we are doing. And we believe that sort of, you know, one reason for this poor engagement and this poor adoption is because, again, BI has somewhat become a victim of its own success, and that there's a wealth of content out there, but a lack of sort of control and governance around that content is leading to very cluttered BI environments, right? It's difficult to find any reports that are useful because they sit alongside a lot of duplicative and obsolete content. And without a doubt, you know, any organization of scale has multiple BI tools and multiple sources of BI, everything from the visualization tools to the data science tools to documents and spreadsheets to, you know, data sets and their underlying data stores. There's a wealth of places that I need to understand and go to if I really want to find the best asset that is going to help me as a business user. And so, you know, that's what Metric Insights came to market to solve. We produce what we call a BI portal to really give analysts a place to control the publishing process of content for users and to understand what's out there already. And secondly, to give users sort of a much more effective experience for consuming BI, so that, you know, they want to use BI rather than pick up the phone to an analyst to get their questions answered. And we do that today by building plugins to all the different data sources and sources of BI. Again, everything from sort of spreadsheets to the BI tools and data science assets. And we enable analysts and publishers of content a way of curating that content that they want the end users using. So the subset of content that exists out in these applications that they actually want to certify and make available to their end users. And we do that through this concept of what we call publishing workflows that, again, let someone pick and choose what content they want to put out there, let them attach the necessary metadata and categorization of that content so that users can be literate around what it actually is, and then certify it and put it into this concept of a centralized catalog, if you like, that is obviously synced up with permissions and security but one place where users can come and discover content easily in the organization, wherever it might have been created. And a big part of that is the concept of search, which we're going to talk about today in relation to AI and LLM integrations. So one place to come and find things. Now, we go a little further. We then, within our platform, allow you to create different user experiences, for want of a better word. So package up BI in a way that makes it easy for a particular persona to consume it, whether that's on the browser, whether that's on the mobile device, through email, through Slack, through Teams. Really make it easy for people to consume the BI that you want them using. So again, that manifests itself in this concept of a centralized catalog for your BI, which is very curated, that contains the necessary metadata for a user to understand the content that's in there. So what are the metrics, how they defined for a particular report, who owns that content? If I have questions, how's it categorized? Does it contain sensitive information? All those things, when was it last updated? All those things that, again, as a user, if I stumble across a report, I can make a decision about whether it's going to help me. And the piece I want to talk about today is this concept of search. So today within the platform, we have this concept of a search engine for your BI. Think of Google. It's that paradigm where I can go and enter search terms. The engine will go and look through the metadata in the catalog, and it will bring me back a ranked set of results. Hopefully bubbling up to the top, the content that is what I'm looking for. And we obviously make that available in different locations, like the browser application, on the mobile device through Slack, Teams. Again, making it easy, hopefully for users to discover content. And it's this piece that we've identified as an area where large language models and AI can actually really start to enhance this user experience, because searching for a bit of content is usually the first piece of the journey, if you like. And we're doing this through the concept of what we're calling a BI concierge. So that's what I'm going to refer to today, that is integrating today with the GPT LLM engine. We're building in a way that will actually integrate with other LLMs as they become sophisticated and can help us. But we'll see how the market evolves. So if you think about that search paradigm, and Wayne alluded to some of this, right? Search within our product today is a very Google-like experience. So I can enter a search term, it'll look through the metadata. Similar to Google, it will often bring me back pages and pages of results. And what we're relying on is that the algorithms behind that search will bubble up to the top the thing that I'm looking for. And often it does. And what search is actually, if you break it down, what it's very good at in sort of the BI concept is finding something that I probably suspect is out there already. So if I'm looking for a report that I know is created, I've maybe seen it before, I just can't remember what tool it was in or where it was in that tool. If I've got a pretty good idea of what the name of it is or what it contains, if I type that in, chances are it's going to come back on the first page, and I'll go and access that report. It's a one-time thing. I enter a search, I get the result, or I don't. What it is not great at is, as again, Wayne alluded to, having that conversation and that clarification around what it is I'm trying to solve. So if, rather than show me sales analysis reports, I have a question like, can you help me explain this particular business problem? It becomes more difficult to expose that with search. And so that's where this concept of the concierge comes in. And unsurprisingly, the analogy is, if I go visit a new city or a country, I've got two options. I can sit down and get on the web and start Googling around to find out what it is I can do there, or which restaurants I should go and eat at, or I can go old school and buy the guidebooks and figure out what's going on and build my itinerary. But that's going to be restricted to the body of knowledge that I've been able to discover. So the websites I visit, the guidebooks I buy, how up to date are they? How broad are they in terms of telling me information about the area? But, you know, I can build an itinerary out of it. Or I can, when I get there, go and talk to the hotel concierge, and she's probably got, you know, much more up-to-date information about what's going on. She's an expert in the area, in that domain. And through a conversation, asking me questions, me clarifying what I'm interested in, she can probably come up with a much more refined itinerary that's going to make me happy and let me explore the area. And we want to bring that sort of experience to BI search, if you like. And so, you know, again, similar to what Wayne touched on in his slides, what that allows us to do is enable conversations both from a business user perspective, asking more sort of business questions like, can you explain this particular issue that I'm seeing in the business, or can you recommend or suggest? Those are sort of terms that are, you know, very prevalent to having an LLM answer it rather than just a regular search engine. But also empower the business analyst as well, you know, because we have this lineage of metadata around where reports are coming from. You know, if I'm a new business analyst in the organization, being able to easily understand and have a conversation around what exists already, what data I should be using, what are other analysts using in the area, and LLM is very, very strong at that. So let's look at some practical examples. I'm going to take you through some of the product that we've got out that we're building today, and, you know, just for info's sake, you know, so this is a part of the product that is in development. We're looking to release later in the year as a beta with some of our customers who are involved with helping us build this out. So it's an active development project right now, but you can see some of the work that's going on here. And as Wayne said, it all starts with this concept of a prompt, where a user can initiate a conversation with the concierge. And let's look at it both from sort of the end user and the analyst perspective. We'll start with the end user. And typically what we're encouraging is these sort of more business type questions. So it's not that I'm necessarily saying, I want to find this particular report. It's I'm trying to understand the particular issue or solve a particular problem. Can you make some recommendations around content within the catalog that might help me with that? So why did sales drop in Canada? And when I enter a particular question, what's happening behind the scenes is what LLMs are very good at is inferring the intent behind my question. So, you know, initially it's recognized that I'm asking a question around BI, right? And it's not some, you know, left field question that it can't answer. It needs to be strong enough to infer that and understand that. And if it recognizes, in this case, it's a question around BI, it's going to dig into the catalog. It's going to look through the metadata. And the concierge is coming back not with pages and pages of results, it's coming back with a few recommendations around how it thinks or what it thinks might help me answer that particular question. So 3 reports in this case coming from different tools. It adds those to a carousel on the right-hand side, lets me easily flip through those, look at the metadata on the right, gives me a preview of what the report is. And, you know, I can look at those suggestions. But importantly, I can also continue the conversation as Wayne was talking about. So the ability now to either for the concierge to ask clarifying questions if it doesn't quite understand, or for me to add additional context into what it is I'm trying to find out. So in this case, you know, oh, I see this report could be interesting, but it's only at the product category level, interested in channel information as well. Do you have anything for that? And it might clarify that one of them does actually contain that, or it might make additional recommendations and add them into the list. So very simple example, but yeah, again, it's getting me to a targeted piece of content rather than a one-time, here's 10 pages of results, you know, go figure out whether one of these can help you. The other thing that Wayne talked about in his slides is using LLMs to then help carry out functions within the product. Now, we have a lot of functionality within our platform that's available today. None of this is sort of new from a functional perspective, but it requires product knowledge to be able to carry out some of these activities. And oftentimes, you know, a lot of the people we're serving with BI, you know, their job is not to be BI analysts. Their job is to do whatever their job is, and BI is hopefully just an enabler for that. And the more barriers you can remove to carrying out functions, the more likely, obviously, they are to actually use the products. And so LLMs can be good in sort of having guided conversations to carry out functionality. And it's simple things like, you know, we have the ability to be able to subscribe to content within our product, regardless of the tool. So, and I think Wayne sort of showed this example in his slides was, yeah, maybe I want to subscribe to the sales report. In the product today, I would go through a series of steps to set up the schedule, how I want to receive it, to do that. Well, the LLM, the concierge, has the context around what I'm doing today. So it's recognized when I said subscribe me, that actually I receive an email already on a weekly basis on Friday at 8 a.m. and says, okay, let me clarify. Do you want me to add this into the same email that you're receiving? So I didn't have to go and figure out that I'm already receiving that and edit that and add this piece of content in. Or if it's, you know, no, actually, I need this for my Monday morning sales meeting and I need it by 9 a.m. And actually, it would be really useful to get this in the Slack channel. So, you know, if I'm on the road, I can just grab it. Again, I can enter some clarifying guidance, if you like, to the concierge to do that. And so then they're going to go off and create the work with our APIs to create that behind the scenes, that distribution. Yeah, simple things like sharing with other users. Sure, I could do this through the product, or I could just tell the LLM to share it with Mike and add some comments in. It's going to create that behind the scenes. So anywhere where there's sort of complex, well, not complex, but multi-step processes which require product knowledge, and a classic example in our product is the one, again, that Wayne alluded to, the setting up of alerts on content. We're able to do that in the product today is, you know, say, let's set up an alert condition for this sales analysis report. Again, yeah, I want to be alerted if my region drops unexpectedly for sales. The concierge has the concept around the metadata of this report. So it knows it's a daily report. It knows it's got, you know, trends of sales data within there, and therefore it can make an educated recommendation around a particular alert rule that might make sense, you know, 20% from the 30-day moving average, but allow me to clarify what it is I actually want, you know, adjust those thresholds, adjust the delivery mechanism. Today in the product, that's a, you know, 4 or 5 step wizard for me to set that up and have the knowledge of how to do that. Probably a piece of functionality that's easier to do through a conversation. Because, you know, typically what happens today is I pick up that phone and I ask someone to do it for me. The analyst perspective, again, you know, it's really just doing the same thing, but drilling into more of the metadata. And you've seen a couple of examples of this now, but, you know, I'm new to the organization. Maybe I'm responsible for marketing analytics. Well, you know, what are people using today? What is the source of content, source of data for that content, so that I know, you know, where I should be pulling information from, what tables. And, you know, if I'm responsible for creating some reports around customer acquisition that people are asking for, you know, what other reports are out there based on the same data, so I don't create duplicative content just because I didn't know someone else created it already. So a couple of examples of how this is kind of coming to fruition, and we're obviously, you know, as we think about applications of AI, and I'm sure a lot of vendors are going through this process right now, you know, not just in the BI space. You know, there's the hype, and there's then the reality and the complexities of integrating this technology. And we're all sort of working towards that big vision of, you know, this robo analyst, as Wayne called it, being able to answer anything at any time. Reality is that we need to sort of get a little grounded in terms of what's actually possible right now, in terms of, you know, how much can we train the model, you know, what is it capable of doing. You know, we don't want to put something in there that is going to cause more work, obviously, right? Because it's not fully understanding what it is people are trying to find or achieve. So we're just biting off this tiny piece right now in terms of, you know, improving search, improving discoverability, almost as sort of the first rung of the ladder to enabling better self-service, remove that conversation where the business user picks up the phone just to find out whether a report exists today or which one they should be using and which one they can trust. So a little bit around the integration, because I think this relates to what I'm sure will be a lot of questions around sort of security and, you know, do I have to put data up in the cloud? And if you're using GPT, how does all that work? When we're thinking about integration of these engines, we're thinking about them actually for very specific parts of the flow and use case. So what you're looking at here is a very sort of logical representation, but we have a number of entry points for accessing the concierge. Obviously, there's a portal on both desktop and mobile. I mentioned we have integrations with Teams and Slack, so we're going to make it available there. So the user will enter those prompts into the concierge. We then use the LLM, in this case, initially GPT-4, to infer the intent behind their question. So what are they asking for? Are they asking a question that if I respond in terms of uncovering reports and dashboards that might help answer that question, that's what they're looking for? Or is it something that I can't answer right now? And so we need to be able to train the LLM to say, okay, infer the intent behind the question, and then decide whether you can answer it. And if it decides it can answer it, it's then actually integrating with APIs in our platform to understand both that metadata that I spoke about. So it needs to be able to integrate with our search engine and the metadata that we have available to bring back a set of results. And it also needs to be able to integrate with our security API. So if I recommend to Wayne 3 reports that help him answer his question, they're 3 reports that he actually should be accessing or could ask for access to, and they're not highly sensitive, and we don't want everyone seeing them. So it needs to be able to work with the platform that we have today. It's not just something where we're throwing everything over the fence, hoping that the answer comes back and it's relevant to what we're doing. Before we move to questions, I see some coming in. I just want to talk a bit about the bigger picture right now. So as we're talking with organizations, you know, it's not just the vendors thinking about AI, it's organizations like yourselves who are thinking about how they can integrate AI into their businesses. And it's obviously not just from a BI and analytics and data perspective. You know, the HR team's thinking about it, the customer support team's thinking about it, the IT organization is thinking about it. Everyone is creating sort of these chatbots, these co-pilots, these AI enabled applications. And with that, it kind of poses this new challenge in terms of, you know, similar to the BI challenge, which tool should I go to and which report should I look at? Suddenly, we're potentially creating this environment around having the cognitive overhead to know which bot I need to go and ask my question of. And so, you know, we want to get ahead of the game on that. And there's technologies out there that are thinking about this, and customers are thinking about it as well. In terms of, I think Wayne referred to this when we were talking about this prior to the webinar, as sort of the Uber bot of bots, if you like, where as a user, I should just be able to ask my question regardless of what's going to answer it behind the scenes. And so, and then sort of that Uber bot should do the inference around, okay, which underlying technology is best to answer that question and manage the flow of question and answers appropriately. And so, you know, as we think about the concierge, we're building in a way where ultimately it can be the Uber bot, so that it has APIs into it where, you know, you can ask a question, and if we determine, you know, it's not around creating alerts or looking for reports or uncovering resources or requesting access to reports, we decide it's, you know, actually asking a question about HR or creating a support ticket, we can hand that off to a third-party integration that's happening. More likely, this sort of Uber bot is getting created in the organization already. There's other technologies and platforms focused around this, and so, you know, any bot also has to have some sort of API into it, because, you know, if a user query comes in and it's determined it's a question around finding reports, we won't be able to receive that question, answer it, and pass the results back to whatever was, you know, the centralized bot that was asking it in the first place. So, you know, again, there's a lot of work going on in these spaces. It's not just BI. So as you think about what you're creating in your organizations, thinking about the bigger picture is important, so that we don't create this whole mess of, you know, users still picking up the phone because that's the easiest way to do it. So hopefully, you know, that's given you some sort of practical example of kind of what's happening, maybe grounded it a little bit into very specific use cases. But, you know, certainly there's a lot of work going on, as Wayne said, across the industry. And it's going to be interesting to see how all this work comes together. Does it finally start to answer some of the self-service issues in line with not just the technology, as Wayne was saying? It's going to be interesting times, I think, over the coming months and years. So with that, we have about 9 minutes left. I'm seeing some questions coming in.
Yeah, Mike, I answered a bunch, but
okay.
I kind of may put words in your mouth, so we want to ask them.
No
There's
worries.
one. I'll be the moderator here.
Okay, go on.
So there's one question I did not answer, which is, can you like search for an individual like Mike Smitheman, or do you have to search for a customer to find Mike Smitheman? I assume that you can ask the bot for information about Mike and it'll find it, right?
Yeah, so certainly in terms of the concierge, there's a lineage there. We you know, people will often assign, say, ownership to content, if that's where the question's coming from. So, you know, it might be a business owner, a technical owner, a data governance owner of content. So that's something that typically we assign to the content. Secondly, we track usage of the content. So I know Wayne is accessing these reports at this particular time and this often. So that is all metadata that we can then ask questions around. So what are the most common reports that Wayne is looking at? You know, what are the reports that Mike has created in the marketing area? So yeah, again, any metadata that we have, absolutely, you can ask questions around.
So when you're exposing your data to GBT, whether it's metadata or actual data, users want to know, well, how do you do that without giving the data to GBT, right?
Yeah.
So I made some guesses for you, but thought you should talk about that.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. I mean, step back from metric insights for a minute and what we're doing. Yeah, it's obviously, I think, one of the number one concerns out there. And there's a couple of things going on, right? There's technologies that are looking at ways of securing data and masking data and that sort of thing as it gets passed back and forth. There's vendors who are creating their versions of GPT for on-premise usage, right, behind the firewall. And I mentioned we're trying to build our concierge sort of LLM independent so that we can plug in different engines as they become available. But actually what's going on behind the scenes, to sort of talk about some of the secret sauce here of what Metric Insights is doing, is we're actually not really passing any data to GPT. So we have a search engine today that is very good at querying the metadata within the Metric Insights platform. What it lacks is that inference and context and that retaining context around the conversation. So when you enter a query into the concierge, we pass it to GPT. It makes some inference around what sort of that question is about. Mike is looking for something with sales information that is daily, that will help answer why something is trending in a particular direction, and sort of deconstructs your question and passes it to our search engine, which then goes and queries the metadata that we have already, brings back a set of content in terms of names, descriptions, whatever it is you want to pass to the concierge, who will then sort of do your typical almost NLG type function of crafting an answer that it wants to provide within the window. So there is a little bit of metadata getting passed back and forth. As it finds the results, it will package up the necessary metadata for the LLM to be able to write the result that it wants in the window. But we're certainly not, and this is one of the reasons we decided to sort of bite this off right now. We're not passing data for sure to the LLM. If we do pass anything, it's metadata, it's names of things, it's descriptions, tags, that sort of thing that will help them then formulate the answer that they need.
And do those things get passed on to GPT? I assume not, right? Because you're using the API that keep all that data behind the firewall.
We pass bits of the metadata for it to construct the answer. So, if I say something like, help me, if I go back to this example, what are the most popular marketing reports? It will construct that, it'll pass it to our search API. Our search API will pick up that here are the 6 or 7, whatever it is, marketing reports, and here's some metadata around them. It will package that up and send it to GPT, which will then write this answer, as you see here. So this information is kind of what's getting passed for it to formulate the answer. No data, not the whole catalog of metadata or anything like that, just what it needs to write the answer.
Yeah, so you're kind of policing GPT, effectively sandwiching it, right, between your search engine and that kind of mediates it, so you don't have to give it that much information. Your search engine is still doing the bulk of the work and finding things, finding the right reports, right? So a lot of people didn't seem to know that you guys are, you deal in reports, not necessarily queries of raw data. Unless I'm wrong, so correct me. Is that I'm trying to find a specific question, but in other words, are you going to use your tool? Well, someone asked, why don't you just, instead of asking for a report that answers the question, why don't you just ask the question, and get the answer?
Yeah, so I think so primarily, you're right, we deal with sort of the cataloging of reports, right? So hence it's natural to find the ones that you're interested in, and that's the first use case. We do some integration with data as well. So for example, that alert use case, we actually perform that against the data to be able to create that alert and generate the result. But again, it's our alert API that's doing that. We're not passing the data up to GPT. We're just using GPT to carry out the creation of the alert. So, the question, why don't you just answer the question? I think it's a good one, and I think the answer is because it's a little early in the development of these technologies to be able to do that effectively. As Wayne said, there's some restrictions in terms of volumes of data and training these engines on data sets. I think as you look at what the BI tools are doing, they're trying to answer the question, but they're doing it against very discrete sets of data. You probably have to pick the data set that you want to ask the question of, right, before you ask the question, because they can't do it across all the data sets that you might have out there. And so, there needs to be sort of a coming together almost, in terms of you got to use it to find the right report before you can ask the question to answer the actual business question, if that makes sense. So I think ultimately that's the nirvana, is answer the question, but I think we're a little way from being able to do that as an industry at this point. without, again, having the cognitive overhead of having to know which data set to ask the question of.
Right, and that's when you get into maybe the private language models where, okay, you've got a data set, we're going to train the GBT model on this domain, and
Right.
to ensure that it gives accurate answers against it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's two tiers.
I think there needs to be, to your point around sort of scalability, the volume of data, those sort of things, all security. All right, all those sort of things need to kind of get solved a little bit more before that becomes sort of this seamless, hey, I've got any question on my data, what's the answer, right?
Cool. Well, we're at the top of the hour, Mike.
We are. There's a lot of questions in here. We're going to make a note of them, and we'll get back to you, one-on-one afterwards if we haven't answered your questions. I really appreciate you joining us again, Wayne. This was a fun discussion. It's going to be interesting how things play out over the coming months. And thanks again for your time.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.